Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live emergency update as we are tracking Hurricane Rafael that is impacting Cuba right now. And at least some of the good news is that it does look like the USA impacts from Hurricane Rafael are getting a little bit less. And we are going to continue to monitor this here at Team Dominator headquarters. There's the official National Hurricane Center track. That is forecast to increase this to a major hurricane right over western Cuba. I saw some of the latest Hurricane Hunter data, had it dropping down into the 950s, that central pressure. The good news for the USA is it is going to be bending west along that dominant high pressure off the southeastern U.S. It's going to bend back to the west and might even enter a graveyard there in the central Gulf of Mexico. Wind shear is going to increase. A big trough is going to come through around November 12th and 13th, probably with some big severe weather. And this could end up just being a bit of a wispy tropical cyclone that ends up dying there over the central Gulf of Mexico. But we are also monitoring some severe weather as well tomorrow. There's a slight risk down near Midland once again. That could have some moisture issues with it. Some of the dew points could be in the 50s out there. We are going to have to keep an eye on that as well with the Dominator. But it is an absolute miracle that we made it through all of these chases with the Dominator as is, with 4 days of big-time chasing. That just happened. The airbags nearly had some big problems, but we made it back, and here we are. And watch this slider, everybody. See that hurricane bend off to the west a little bit? Let me pop open my Epic pen. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. We had more tornado warnings issued than ever before during the month of October here in Oklahoma. Like 170 tornado warnings, I think, were issued so far during November. We even had an EF3 just to the southwest of Team Dominator headquarters as well. And those like 4 or 5 supercells came right over Team Dominator headquarters. Doug with AccuWeather, my roommate here, he was in grave danger that entire night with like 5 or 6 tornadic supercells moving right over the barn here, losing power like 5 or 6 different times. But, and then the next morning, we had a tornado that missed the barn here by 1/4 mile, a much weaker storm system. But here is that hurricane forecast to move right over Cuba, bending back to the west. And some of the models are showing it curling north toward the coastline of Louisiana as a much weaker storm, probably as like a tropical storm, maybe even weaker. May not even be a huge rainmaker. We might have to have some predecessor rain out ahead of that front that's going to be coming in. But let me show you the steering flow happening with this hurricane. But first, watch as it moves off to the west. It's probably reached peak intensity right about now. And then you can start to see this 850 low. This is by about November 8 or 9 next weekend. Looks like that thing really consolidates, bringing big snow to Raton Pass, the far western Oklahoma Panhandle, down to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, those same areas where we were chasing down the tornado, which was rated EFU, by the way, on that Saturday down here in eastern New Mexico, EFU tornado. And EF1 down in Idabel, Oklahoma, that was the one that we were on 2 days ago, or was that yesterday? That was 2 days ago. We got stranded down in Antlers, Oklahoma with the Dominator. Here's your tropical cyclone, probably Hurricane Rafael by this time. This is by Friday night. I'm going to be doing a speaking event up in Westmoreland, Kansas, but I'm watching down here in Texas on Friday evening. It looks like there could be a little 30 to 40 knot low-level jet down there in the Texas Hill Country. Friday could even be some tornado potential down near the Austin area. But there you can see Rafael weakening. Watch it weakening, and it doesn't even make the U.S. coastline now. Look at that. It starts to curl north ahead of that trough, but then it shears out a little bit because of this dominant high pressure that's just off the southeastern U.S., leading to the drought conditions across the southern Appalachians. That's what's causing this thing to bend way to the west. And then eventually a trough's going to come in right around November 12th or so. But by that time, it's going to accelerate the southwest to northeast wind shear over Rafael, and that's going to be a much weaker tropical cyclone. Maybe a rainmaker, maybe not. Let's go back to the upper levels, and we'll discuss the trough shape here. This is the current trough shape as of Wednesday morning. Looking at it right here, you've got a large positively tilted trough right there, and that's going to close off over the Four Corners region, and that's why you're getting that big time snowfall, maybe even 2 feet plus near Raton Pass. This vortex right along the southern thing closes off. It's still got a lot of backside power. Remember how we discussed this latest tornado producing trough having that back wall power, a lot of flow on the backside that whips around the base of the trough and through the action of shear vorticity deepens the trough. In this case, it's going to close it off even over the four corners, and that's going to maintain that upslope flow over southeastern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico down here, even the far western panhandle of Oklahoma, Boise City could be impacted. There's your tropical cyclone down there coming into western Cuba right now. This is leading to big time snowfall from eastern Colorado out toward the Goodland area, and eventually it's going to settle down with bigger snow northeastern New Mexico out near areas like Boise City. Watch this action as I step forward on this model. Watch it close off and even retrograde a little bit. Drop south of the Four Corners region. Usually if it's right near the Four Corners region, that brings the heaviest snowfall up into the high plains of Colorado. That's your Four Corners region. This bowling ball dives south of the Four Corners, and that's going to bring the heaviest snow into northeastern New Mexico, the Oklahoma Panhandle, southeastern Colorado, and southward across portions of eastern New Mexico. All because it's closing off there to the south of the Four Corners region. There you can see the bowling ball shifting east through New Mexico. That's going to bring big time snow just to the north of that low track. That's where the heaviest snow is going to fall. Northeastern New Mexico into the far western Oklahoma Panhandle, southeastern Colorado. There's Rafael just sitting there upstream of this. Definitely experiences some of the lack of wind shear with this high pressure over the next couple of days, probably even through the middle to end portion of next week. And then it's going to start feeling this southwest and northeast oriented upper level wind shear, and that's just going to shred this tropical cyclone offshore to the south of Louisiana. Classic shred job there. Watch it as that shear gets a little closer to the hurricane. Tropical cyclone there. Watch it weaken. This is going to bring severe weather. Probably, but the moisture stays down south. Because of that last mega trough, we had a big time cold front that went through and that cleared out the moisture a little bit. But if this trough here had more moisture to work with, you'd be talking about a big severe weather event to the east of that bowling ball. But instead, it's going to bring this wind shear, southwest and northeast oriented wind shear, and that's going to shred Rafael to the south of Louisiana. But this trough upstream, we got to watch. This is going to be a tornado producer right there. I think around the 12th or 13th. Watch this thing just dive bomb and amplify over the western U.S. Look at that. That's why I think we're going to have big snow in California and the Rockies, because you're going to get a lot of these systems diving south on the eastern edge of that warm North Pacific Oscillation. And this is going to bring more severe weather for around November 13th for the southern high plains. Eventually, this stuff's going to invade Dixie Alley as we go through the later portion of November. Maybe it might even be this system. We've got another system back behind it. We got another system back behind that. Looks like second season chaos here across the southern plains. Look at that thing. That's going to bring severe weather to Dixie Alley right there, folks, right around November 14 or so. This is going to bring that big severe weather across this portion of Dixie Alley. Notice how that trough finally invades the southeast into Dixie Alley. There's been drought conditions out there dominating the last couple years. And finally, it looks like that trough is going to break down that ridge. Going to break down this little wispy ridge right here in between them. Look at that negative tilt right there. That's a negatively tilted trough. That's going to probably bring some big severe weather here across the central U.S. And that's about 8 days out. Then we have another trough coming, another trough back behind that. Just one after another. Conveyor belt of big-time storm systems. It all depends on if that has moisture, and it should, because the Gulf of Mexico this time of year is cooking. And that's also going to bring a big low-level jet because of that neutral tilt. Look at that low-level jet there, folks. Well, a little bit of a ribbon. Oh, wait. It just took us right back. Let's go out to the 14th. That's your large-scale, low-level jet ahead of that neutral, if not a negatively tilted storm system. So I think that's probably going to bring severe weather and rain to portions of Dixie Alley later on. So let me show you what some of these snowfall totals are looking like now over the southern high plains, central and southern high plains. This is through the entire evolution of that system. The GFS is even showing greater than 40 inches there near La Vita Pass, just to the west of Raton Pass. This area here is called Raton Pass, so if you're heading south on I-25, that might even be Raton there. There's a lot of construction down on I-25 over Raton Pass too, and this is just going to get hammered by this big-time snowfall, probably at least a couple of feet. And it looks like that big snowfall is going to be headed up into Boise City in the western Oklahoma Panhandle as well. Also down near Fort Sumner, those areas where we just saw that tornado. We saw an EFU tornado. It was rated an EFU because you couldn't access the terrain to see where the damage was out there. But I ate at that Mexican food truck down there. Incredible food down in Fort Sumner as that storm was coming off the mountains north of Roswell. Roswell had that big flash flood emergency down there, even causing loss of life. Supercells coming off the mountains. We chased the rope there. So that Roswell flash flood emergency was from the system before that. Then we had that positively tilted system, which didn't quite produce in Oklahoma, even though the parameter space was high. Then we had this last backside loaded system that led to a number of tornadoes, even record-breaking tornadoes here in Oklahoma during November. And now you got big snowfall coming in here in eastern New Mexico because of that closed upper level low. Let me show you what that low is going to do. You're looking at the NAM model. There it is, 57 hours. This is on Friday afternoon. This is your bowling ball of a low, and it looks like it might even bring that heavier snow right into the east, right into the far western tip of the Oklahoma Panhandle, including Black Mesa. But look at all this upslope flow right there. That is orographic lift, orographic enhancement on the north side of that bowling ball, even though that's at 500 millibars. Let me show you what it looks like at 850. Look at that upslope. So by this time, the upslope is starting to shut down, but a little bit earlier, at the end of this week, you're going to have major upslope flow around this portion and including northeastern New Mexico. By this time, you're going to be talking about deformation zone snow in the backside of that upper level low, kind of a 1-2 punch. And we're getting big snow up along I-70 up in Colorado already today. But with that bowling ball extending a little bit south of the Four Corners, it brings that upslope flow down into this portion. Southeastern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, far western Oklahoma Panhandle. Watch what the 3-kilometer NAM shows. And then we're going to pivot to the severe weather tomorrow down in southwest Texas on the warm side of this system. Let me show you what the snowfall totals are on this convective allowing model. Look at those snowfall totals. This is through Thursday afternoon at 18Z. You got 20 inches here along Raton Pass. This is an area that's going to receive that snowfall too because they have a little bit of a elevated terrain that extends east right along those mountains across southeastern Colorado. We storm chased a lot down there, and you've seen those mountains. A lot of times supercell storms will be concealed by those. But when you get that northeasterly flow up there, easterly and northeasterly flow, that creates orographic enhancement right along that ridge line down there. Right along the border, that's Raton Pass, folks. Raton is where I would cover this winter storm if I were covering it, but I have a speaking event coming up on Friday up at Westmoreland, Kansas. That's for the farmers up there, people impacted by those. Expecting a ton down here in New Mexico too. Maybe even Black Mesa. We will have to see if that area in far western Oklahoma is able to get in on the action. I think it probably will, especially as the cold air aloft sweeps over that area. But the heaviest snow going to be right along Raton Pass. Look at that, just continue to accumulate down here. If I was still living in Colorado, I would head south on I-25 and work this snow event if I had a working car or if I could rent cars, which I can't do. But I've got the Dominator 3 here with an airbag issue, and I'm not going to be able to head up to the higher terrain up here. It is interesting that through Friday, there's a lot less in the way of snowfall up through Goodland being indicated by the 3-kilometer NAM here, including Lyman. A lot of times the GFS model will have way too high of snowfall totals in there. And sometimes you can kind of mess around with these ratios a little bit. But boy, you look at the Kuchera method, and it actually shows greater than 10-to-1 ratios down here near Raton Pass. And near the foothills too in Colorado. Probably up near my old apartment, up near Genesee. Could even get a couple of feet of snow on that. But the snow is going to persist a little bit further south. New Mexico, southeastern Colorado. Might even be pushing 3+ feet right along those foothills there. Southeastern Colorado up into New Mexico, right up in here. Big time snowfall, 2-3 feet of snow. I would definitely pop out there if I didn't have that speaking event. There it is. Big snowfall total for the foothills, southeastern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico. There it is. So let's look now at the severe weather in southwest Texas tomorrow. There's a slight risk down there. And I'm thinking that moisture, it could be a little bit moisture starved. We're going to go out to 33 hours. Let's see where our upper level low is located. And there it is. That's Thursday afternoon at 21Z, folks. You can see that trough starting to move into West Texas. This is the area that we're going to be watching for severe weather. There's a large slight risk. Big jet streak rounding the base of the trough as we talked about. That's that backside loading, rounds the base of the trough through the action of shear vorticity, increases its amplitude, and then comes around where there's a little bit moisture, more moisture as a ski jump exit region of the jet. Let's take a look really quick at the moisture. And boy, by peak heating 21Z, it looks like the moisture is going to be a little bit meager into this target area, even though you've got 70s dew points sitting over the Gulf of Mexico just to the southeast. That trough doesn't really excite as much of a low-level jet because it's a closed upper-level low. Not as much in the way of vorticity advection out there. And it's largely ineffective at pulling that big moisture northward into the Permian Basin. You've got low 50s dew points, near 50 dew points there, but that may just not quite be enough to develop that tornado potential. Let's look at a forecast sounding near that area too. Photographs are very favorable for severe weather and even tornadoes, but your low-level thermodynamics are just not favorable at that sounding. 57 over 55, hardly any heating. You get a ton of cloud cover as well. So the kinematics are very favorable with this trough coming out, but your thermodynamics are not really supportive of surface-based severe weather out there. Elevated severe weather seems very possible. There is a 2% tornado risk out there, but you might have to get into some of that deeper moisture. Let's step forward to 0Z. It does look like we try to get a little bit of that moisture nosing up into Midland, Odessa area. Also along the Rio Grande River, you get a little bit of some better moisture. But up near the higher terrain where those storms are going to move off, you've got dew points in the 40s to near 50. Just not as good moisture, 50 to 55 there. But a little ribbon of near 60 dew points trying to come up to the Permian Basin. A lot of stable air up here. I mean, it's mainly a winter storm, so I do think that the severe weather is going to be a little bit lower. And I'm most interested in the severe weather around November 12th, 13th time period. It does look like later on in the evening you get a little bit better moisture coming in here, so I could see it being more of an overnight type of a severe weather setup. But I am very interested in the setup on Friday in central Texas, right here. You get a bit of a dryline Pacific front more so, deeper moisture, right up, getting pulled up into the Austin area. This forecast model also shows some vigorous convection developing. This is likely going to be in the form of supercell storms here near the I-35 corridor near Austin. This is going to be on Friday, so day 2, severe weather near the I-35 corridor. Thank you, Team Dominator subscribers, for making these updates possible. I also think that there could be a threat of tornadoes there because of a decent low-level jet. You look at 850 millibars, and look at that. You're cooking at about 40 knots ahead of that line of convection moving into that central Texas, I-35 near Austin. Here's your snowstorm continuing up here. It's not going to be a snowstorm in northwest Oklahoma, but it is in the far west part of the panhandle out here, out near Raton Pass. This is all just a moisture conveyor belt for this system, just feeding that winter storm on the backside. So that's what I'm most worried about down here in central Texas, down near Austin. And you can look at some of the traditional severe weather parameters down there. 0 to 3 energy helicity index, for example. And that definitely shows where the severe weather is going to be focused. Down near Austin right there, nosing up into the Texas Hill Country. That's where we expect the severe weather to settle in on Friday. So thank you everybody for tuning in to this live emergency weather report. Seems like all these weather reports are emergencies now. Well, we got a lot of crazy weather out there. We are going to be watching this on Friday. That's the next one that we're watching. Let's take a look really quick now at the data here for Hurricane Rafael. It should be noted that there is some discrepancy between the global models. A couple of these still try to lift it northward as a tropical storm, but now a couple of these continue at west-southwestward. Might even miss all those troughs to begin with, and then it just dies once that southwesterly wind shear begins to pick it up. The intensity has probably reached its peak, but a couple of these do try to maintain that Category 3 status even out into the Gulf of Mexico. But I personally think that it's probably reached its peak intensity. You can see the land interaction just shredded this thing. So if it didn't reach category status here to the east of the Isle of Youth, it didn't make it because it started to undergo the land interaction. And I think it's making landfall probably as a Category 2 type hurricane up here, as you can definitely see the topography just shred that tropical cyclone. This mission finished. That shows the pressure down to 956. So it probably did reach Category 3 status here to the east of the Isle of Youth. But it's starting to feel the interaction with the land now as that's coming in. But we are going to make this off season, we're going to make a major push on our science mission. We are going to be deploying sensors into tornadoes by rocket once again. And we are going to be getting back after it on that front as well. So this is your live update. Thank you everybody for tuning in to this live update. I'm going to be running about 10 miles today to try to get back after it. Get back in shape campaign's about to come back after a couple years of a little bit less exercise, or a couple of weeks of a little less exercise, not a couple of years. But thank you everybody for tuning in. A lot of severe weather ahead. I'm going to be doing a speaking event up in Westmoreland on Friday. And then I think around November 12th to the 14th, another mega trough ejection is anticipated. Thank you everybody for tuning in.